Okay, let's talk about life expectancy at birth. Let me tell you that for any calculation of the welfare of a country, um, of a population, is the first indicator chosen always. The reason is so simple. The better you live, the longer you live. And this reasoning is cannot be discussed. Because you can see this in the statistics of countries. In African countries, people live, much less than in developed countries. That's true. So these indicators measure basically in simple terms the number of years an individual should live, and on average at birth, by being birthed in a given country of the world. Okay. For example, if a child now is born healthy in New York today, he or she would live an average of 78 years. That's life expectancy for New York, for United States. As the average of North America and Europe is 73, it can be said that Paraguayan citizens live longer. Look at this. I said again. As the average for North America and Europe is 73. This is counting all the countries of North America and Europe. This is Canada, States, Mexico, Spain, Germany, Norway, Sweden, Austria, whatever. The average of that is 76 years. 73 years. So it can be said that Paraguayan citizens, that's the BlackBerry of my wife. Sorry about that. Okay, I'll say that again. The average for North America is 73, right? So it can be said that Paraguayan citizens live longer in average than those from North America and Europe. Amazing, right? As in Paraguay, according to the latest figures, this is 2010, the life expectancy is 76.7 years, just as I said before. For some sources, from some other sources, it's 75.4. But anyway, amazing, right? So Paraguay, you should know this, among the 221 countries, is ranked 48th. This is being in the top 50 among the longest living citizens of the world. And in Latin America is ranked 6th. Below are, for example, Poland with 75, Venezuela with 73, China with 73, Colombia with 72, Brazil with 72, which is position 12 in Latin America, Peru with 71, Ukraine, which is an European country, 68, Bolivia with 66, which is 10 years shorter than Paraguay. Remember the hypothesis? Are you having the hypothesis in your mind? Okay. Life expectancy in Paraguay is above many European countries, such as Turkey, for example, Bulgaria, Romania, Russia, as I told you before. Haiti's life expectancy is about 30 years. 30 years. Many African countries are between 30 to 40. Certainly, only African countries occupy the position 174 to 221, which is the last part of the list. Life expectancy in South Africa is only 48 years, even though it's the most developed country in Africa. Even more surprising are the following data when compared with those of Paraguay. The average life expectancy in Latin America is 70 years. Paraguay is 76.7. The average for Asia is 61. The average for Africa is 55, and Oceania is only 71, which is less than Paraguay again. Actually, life expectancy in Paraguay has changed dramatically over the last 20 years. passing from position 89th to position 48th in all the countries, while other countries like Russia fell from 79th to 129th in the same period. So what is going on here? Look at this. Life expectancy in Paraguay is so important. Life expectancy in Paraguay is now 2 years more than what was the highest life expectancy in 1970 for Norway, which was the country at the top of the list. What about that? In 1970, isn't that 100,000 years ago? 1970. So what is going on here? Just by looking at this, I can see one thing. A tsunami is coming about Paraguay. It's just like a rocket, which is in the place and is about to launch. United States, the world superpower, became a big country because of several reasons. In any case, its sustained development was, by economic growth, was always around, say, historically between 3 to 4% per year. I'm talking about real GDP by percentage, okay? You don't have to be confused. This is real GDP by percentage, okay? In 2010, the average economic growth for European Union was 1.8%. Spain decreased 0.1%. Venezuela, the fifth largest exporter of oil in the world, fell 1.9%. Italy grew 1.3%. France grew 1.5%. Germany did very well, grew 3.5%. United States grew 2.5%. And Brazil made it excellent, 7.5% in 2010. An excellent growth for a big economy. But Paraguay has grown in 2010 by 15%. Predictions for 2011 are also very good, even though we had that foot and mouth disease onset. If you believe this growth is only the result of a regional phenomenon, you're wrong. You're so wrong. Paraguayan growth was the highest in Latin America, and it was the second highest economic growth in the world after Qatar in 2010. But remember that Qatar is a country that bases its growth on the global environmental destruction by burning fossil fuels, and this is the main export article they have, right? Certainly, exports are only one component of the real GDP. The same argument against those who say that Paraguayan growth was based only about soy and meat exportations. But few people know the importance of these two things. I talk about that later. But besides, few people know that Paraguay is not only exporter of soy and bean. Did you know that Paraguay exports plastics, for example, medicines, leather, clothing, transformers, and cables of the highest quality? Well, people should know that also. It's not only about soy and meat. And besides, we export enormous amounts of energy. Well, let's talk about the infant mortality rate by the year. What is this? Well, basically is the number of deaths per 1,000 births in a country before 1 year old. Of course, a high number would indicate a serious and complex problem of health, since it's measuring not only the infant mortality, but it is measuring also the maternal health, and many other aspects like the number of hospitals, the presence of other diseases like congenital diabetes, for example. So in the area of Latin America and the Caribbean, Bolivia has, for example, an infant mortality rate of 40. Honduras has 25. Haiti has 64. And Paraguay, according to UNICEF and WHO 2010-2011 sources, has 19. In Brazil, some sources indicate 22. This is CIA sources, CIA fact book, for example. And others indicates 17. This is WHO sources. The average for the Americas is, including the United States and Canada, is 15. So again, the infant mortality rate in Paraguay has been reduced from 31 to 19 only in 10 years. This is amazing, and it is expected to fall below the average American within a year or two. The African average infant mortality is 80 deaths before 1 year old. South Africa, as we said before, the most developed country in Africa, owner of the biggest mines of gold and diamonds in the world, has more than twice infant mortality rate than Paraguay. Let me show you a comparison between what was happening along these 20 years, the past 20 years, with the infant mortality rate in South Africa and Paraguay. You see, there was a moment in which both were very similar, and then what happened? You see? Okay, so in fact, if we compare Paraguay with South Africa in respect to the 8 selected indicators, you'll maybe be very surprised. This is Paraguay 8, South Africa 0. Can you imagine what would be like? What would be Paraguay like in terms of health indicators if we can count with a greater number of hospitals, for example? Literacy rate. Literacy rate measures the number of citizens able to read and write. It's so simple. In Latin America, Uruguay has the highest rate with 98%. Then comes Argentina with 97%. Then comes Chile with 95%. And Paraguay with 94%. Very close. Venezuela has the same figures as Portugal, which is a country of the European Union, with 93%. And then comes Peru with 92, Ecuador with 91, and far behind comes Brazil with 88%, which is the position 119 of the world. Then comes Bolivia and Mexico with the same numbers, is 86%. Then comes Honduras with 90%, Nicaragua with 67%, India with 60%, Haiti with 52% only. Watch out, remember the hypothesis. And then comes, for example, Afghanistan, where, and this is not so rare, this is, there are many countries in that conditions, where only 2 out of 3 people know how to read and write. Well, what about crime rates? This is as murders per 100,000 inhabitants. In the video I made about the natural conditions of Paraguay, it was noted, it was very clear that the security of this land in terms of natural disasters is absolutely high. But some critics, perhaps with the best intentions, said that in terms of criminality, Paraguay was very insecure and extremely unsafe. But they should know this, that the insecurity is measured usually in terms of murders per 100,000 inhabitants, because there is no other way to measure it. It's not wise to try to measure that in terms of robs or thefts or there are so many factors that influences the criminality. So it is much better, and this actually is the way it's done, to measure it by the number of murders per 100,000 inhabitants. So the average for South America is 26 murders per 100,000 inhabitants per year, of course. In Paraguay we have 12, while in Brazil almost double this number, is 22. Right? So we are way lower than the average for South America, which is 26, and Brazil 22. Ecuador is 18, Venezuela is 48, almost 4 times more than Paraguay. Colombia is 40, Honduras, which is the most violent country in the world, is 77. El Salvador with 70, very close. Believe it or not, Mexico is only 18. Guatemala is 45. So these figures place Paraguay among the safest countries in Latin America. Believe it or not. And usually, is one of the worst examples of the toxic speaking. For example, what is the perception of criminality in Argentina? Well, you should know that could be true. That perception of to be unsafe is quite, high in Buenos Aires, but the rest of Argentina is quite secure. The same happens with Paraguay. We have here a perception of being unsafe, but it's not true. I mean, I'm not saying that there are no crimes. That would be stupid. But I'm saying that this country is one of the safest countries of Latin America in terms of criminality. I'm not saying this without any supporting numbers.